Do you know any Hebrew?
Listen closely. In our lesson, I'll teach you some.
Yeah. Hello, it is week 43 of Around the World with Joshua and Alyssa, and we are Joshua and Alyssa.
Yes.
Alyssa's going to tell us some more about Israel. I have no idea what she's going to tell us about today, so I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, I'm going to tell you about a few more places in Jerusalem or near Jerusalem that are really important to the story of the life of Christ. So probably if you've heard any Bible stories from that time when Jesus was born all the way till he died, you're going to see some things, some locations that you've read about. So I want to show you some pictures today. We're going to start off first with this little city, and it's not too far away from Jerusalem. Do you know what city this could be? It's very important in the story of Jesus, especially the beginning of his time on earth.
Bethlehem?
Yeah! Good guess. So this...
I thought that looked like a stable. Just kidding.
This is the city of Bethlehem. It's really not that far away from Jerusalem at all. And to the right of it are these big open fields. And so when you read the story, it talks about there were shepherds abiding in the fields, keeping watch over their flocks by night. So here are all these fields kind of like all around the city, and it makes sense. That's where you keep your sheep, not too far away from where you lived. And that was Bethlehem. Now, my tour group didn't actually go into the city of Bethlehem because there was a lot of unrest with the different people groups, and a lot of it is Muslim controlled. So our guide was a Messianic Jew, and so it still is a little bit tricky for him to go to places like that too. So we didn't go to Bethlehem, but this was our view of Bethlehem. And then this is an important place toward the end of Jesus's time here on earth. This is the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yeah.
So the trees are really, really old, and they're slow growing, so they're not like super tall or anything, but they're very sturdy. They're not going anywhere. The garden is really cool though. They have it like all kind of divided out, and of course there's always like stories passed down. This was the tree where Jesus wept, and we don't know exactly. And you know what? These may not be the trees that were there. They might be really tiny from the time of Christ, and then the other ones might have just died away. But this is the garden, and of course, like the Catholics tend to do, they built a church there, a great big huge one, and the garden is just to the left of it when you're looking at it this way. So they have a great big church and all sorts of stuff inside because they just kept building things wherever these locations seem to be. When you walk through the city of Jerusalem, there are little signs on the walls, and there's this trail that they call the Via Dolorosa, which is supposedly it's the walk that Jesus took with the cross up to Golgotha, where he was crucified. So for the Catholic people and for other groups, it's really important to them that they go on this specific walk just like Jesus would have done, that they do different things at each of the stops on the walk. The church on the right is a church that's built up over the spot where they believe that Jesus was crucified, and then they also think that the tomb was there too, like right very close to each other. I don't really quite see that. And the church is like very impressive. It's huge. It has all sorts of ornate gold and stuff. And then this area, like,
how did that get in there?
Makes you sick. It's a very, very tall building with like a rounded thing on top, and people are lined up for hours to walk through there. And if you walk into that spot, supposedly there's a rock where the cross would have stood or whatever, and you can pass by it and see it. But it's just like out of control, really. It's just too much going on, and it seems like idolatry because you're just worshiping these pieces of rock, and you don't even know if that's what it was, if that was the rock where Jesus died or where he rose from the dead, but either way, it's just a rock. And they have at the entrance to this big church, this is a really bad picture, but at least you can get the idea. They have another big slab of rock, what is there on the left, and supposedly if you bring something, and it's something usually white, and you lay it on this rock and you say a prayer, it will carry blessings and it will heal people and whatever. So this lady has, like, her head is wrapped up in a white scarf, her bag is full of like white cloths, and I saw so many people put like white handkerchiefs or whatever on this rock. They say a prayer, they pick it up, and they take it with them, and now it's going to have this permanent blessing for them. Kind of strange. So that's one of the locations where people believe that Jesus may have been crucified. Another one is called the Garden Tomb, and this is just outside this city a little bit, and they say that this rock has the shape of a skull. Now when I look at it, I don't necessarily see it. This is an older picture of it, and it shows, if you look kind of like, there's the two camels a little bit to the right and up, you can kind of see how it looks like two eyes maybe. So it's a bit of a stretch too. And honestly, I don't know if we exactly know the exact location, but this tomb area does have a lot of things that would have been very similar to the one where Jesus's body was put. Like, it has a press, a wine press, and there are some historical accounts that talk about that where Jesus was buried, there was a wine press nearby. So they think, oh, well, maybe this must be the one then. But this garden is very well kept, and they have lots of really beautiful Bible passages and flowers and like little paths you can walk on. And it's a lot more reflective and not so ornate and out of control like the big church that's all built up. So there is a tomb here, and it's kind of just like cut into the rock in the wall, and it has like some markings on the wall on the inside. But we don't really know, and honestly it doesn't make a big difference whether we find the exact tomb or not. We have the written account that Jesus isn't there anymore. We know he's up in heaven, and he's preparing a place for those who are his followers. But it's kind of just interesting to see the design of it, because I guess kind of as a kid I thought it was just like a cave, a hole in the wall maybe, and it might have been, or it might have been hewn out like this, and there's like a trough kind of in the front. That's why there's like those little steps there, so they could have rolled the big stone to cover the opening to the door, and we don't know. I mean, this dates to about the right time period, but we don't really know. They have lots of really beautiful flowers. I really like cauliflowers too, so I was very excited to see those. Now, Jesus's last few days on earth, he spent time with his disciples, and then he got ready to go back up to heaven. Do you know where he left from?
The Mount of Olives?
Yes.
Yes.
And that is where he's coming back again. Supposedly that's where his feet are going to hit first, and then all of the events for the end of the world as we know it now will begin. So this is from the Mount of Olives, looking back at Jerusalem, and people have paid a lot of money to be buried there because that's where Jesus is coming back first, where Messiah will be. And it's really interesting to me that there's prophecy that the Messiah will return and that he will enter through that gate that's on the right. Do you see it all blocked up? So when they heard that this was a prophecy, people filled that gate in with bricks because now Messiah can't get through. It just is really funny to me that people thought that they could just stop the Messiah or the King from coming back again just by blocking up the entrance to a gate that is prophesied that he's coming through. Kind of seems silly to me. But those are probably some places you've heard about in Bible stories, and so maybe you can kind of tuck those pictures away the next time you hear that story. Like, oh yeah, I've seen a picture of this. The real thing. And you should probably go to Israel so you can see it for yourself. Want to hear some more story? Okay. let's tell some more story about Nathan. So, we left off our story last time where he had gone to the Happy Day Club and he had talked with the teacher, and the teacher had told him that she was both a Jew and a Christian, and it made him very angry, and he ran off and left. And his excuse was that he had to get home for the Sabbath. Well, the truth was Nathan did need to get home for the Sabbath, but he really did not want to hear what that teacher had to say anymore, and he was just going to forget it. Forget, he kept telling himself. Just forget it, Nathan. I don't need to remember that stuff. It's not true. It's not right. Just going to forget it. Well, when he got to his house, he made sure before he walked through the door that he touched his lips, and then he touched the mezuzah, the little box by his door. Inside that box are little slips of paper with the important parts of the Torah. Remember the first 5 books of the Bible? Important parts of it tucked inside. And he was supposed to do that to help him remember that these are important things to know. Well, he came inside the door and his mother called out to him, "Shalom, shalom," which is the greeting for peace. Or they say it for hello, for goodbye, they say it for everything. So he answered back to his mother, "Shalom, mother." She said, "No, hurry. Your Sabbath clothes are laid out on your bed. It's time for you to take your bath and get everything ready in time for the Sabbath." Now, Sabbath is something we don't celebrate. It's a little bit different for the Jewish people. But when the sun goes down, they can't do many things, and they have special things that they follow, special set of rules and different things they do, and we're going to learn about that a little bit here in our story. Well, after Nathan took his bath, he got all dressed up and was ready to go to synagogue with his father. So then he and his father started walking on all the way to the synagogue for their Sabbath service, and his mother stayed home to prepare for the Sabbath. As they were walking, Nathan asked his father, "Are grandfather and grandmother getting ready for their Sabbath too?" His father smiled. He said, "Okay, we're in Chicago and they're in Jerusalem, and their time is 6 hours ahead of ours. So if it is 7 o'clock here, what time is it there?" "Oh, it's 1 a.m., said Nathan. "So what do you think they're doing? Are they celebrating the Sabbath?" "No, they're probably sleeping," Nathan realized. Hopefully they're sleeping. And his father asked him, "So while I've been gone at work this week, have you been studying the Torah? Do you know more and more about it?" Nathan shook his head. He did know more about it. He said, "Yes, Father, but I really wish I had a brother or a sister." His father said, "Shh, don't let your mother hear you say that. You should be blessed that there is one of you and that you are part of our family." Well, while they were at synagogue, Nathan knew exactly what his mom was doing. She was probably laying out the beautiful tablecloth to cover the tables and getting out the tall candlesticks, and she was covering her head and preparing all the right food. And when the sun went down, his mother would light the candles and she would say a blessing, and as she would bring her hands around nearby the candles, and it would be like welcoming people to her home for the Sabbath. And then she would wait for Nathan and his father to get home from synagogue, and then they would have their special meal. So after they finished at the synagogue, they said Good Sabbath to all of their friends, which was Good Sabbath, and wishing their friends a good Sabbath as well, and then they walked back home to be with their mother. When they got home, once again, they remembered to touch their lips and then touch the mezuzah by the door, and they told their mother, "Shabbat Shalom," peace for the Sabbath. And then they washed up for dinner, and they didn't just wash their hands 1 time, not 2 times, 3 times, to prepare for their very special meal. They sat down at their meal just like Nathan knew it would be, and he was hungry and so excited for the special meal. So there were certain things that they had to do in a certain order. First, his father uncovered a dish that had a couple pieces of bread in it and broke off a piece and gave it to each one of them to eat. Then Nathan's mother brought out a plate with a whole fish on it, and she cut off the head of the fish, and she gave it to the father to show that he was the head of the house. And he in turn gave it back to her because she was the queen of the Sabbath. It's a special night for her as the lady of the house. And you notice he has something here on his head, and his dad has something too? It's called a yarmulke, and it covers the back of their head, and it's to show respect and reverence to God. It's just something that the Jewish people do. So they had their special dinner, all sorts of tasty food, and then Nathan went to bed that night still thinking, oh, maybe that teacher had something to say. Maybe Messiah had come. Maybe Messiah was coming again. He didn't really know. The next morning, his father called him, Nathan, hurry up. We've got to go. It's Sabbath day. It's a happy day for the Jews. We need to go back to synagogue. So Nathan got all ready again, and this time his mother came with them. And when they got to the synagogue, the men sat on one side and the women sat on the other. So he didn't sit with his mother during the time. And while they were there, his father was called up to read from the Torah. It made Nathan feel so big and proud to see his father up there reading out of those special words from the Torah. It was very exciting. After the service was over, they met a man who was a long way from home, and he wouldn't be able to journey back to his house before lunch. So Nathan's family invited him over, because of course that's what you do. There would always be food for company. Well, after their lunch was over, they sat to talk with the stranger, and he talked about how Jews from all over the world were returning back to the country of Israel, back to their homeland. So this little area right here is Israel, and really the Jews have been spread out over the whole world just through different things. And the man said, there's so many Jews that are returning, and many thousands are returning from United States, from right here, and they're going back to Jerusalem. Nathan's father tipped his head and he said, well, I've been thinking about it too, and I think we should move to Jerusalem. Nathan was so excited. Grandfather and grandmother will be so excited if we go to Jerusalem. And he almost told the secret. Remember his grandfather told him, I think you should be in Jerusalem for your bar mitzvah. Well, his bar mitzvah was coming up. And now his dad was talking about not just visiting Jerusalem, but going to live there. He was so excited, but he didn't tell the secret. Don't worry. Well, they kept talking about Israel and returning and going back, and it got Nathan thinking again about his grandfather and about why his grandfather was there, because he wanted to be there when Messiah came. He thought, well, maybe I wasn't very nice to that teacher. I think I was kind of rude, and I really shouldn't have responded like that. Maybe I need to go back to her and apologize. Maybe I need to ask a few more questions. And you're going to have to come back next time to see what happens. Hopefully his family really does get to move to Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully, or the story will be really sad. Well, we have something today that is different. And so, if you haven't found it yet, start looking. And we're going to tell you about some missionaries. Some missionaries who we told you about like 8 months ago. So it has been a while.
Yeah.
And we have seen them since then. And I believe they are now back. They finished it was furlough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they finished their furlough. They're back on the field. And that family is Luke and Bethany Snell in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like we have a nice Christmas picture from them.
Yeah.
What cute little boys.
They're so smiley.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked them kind of how stuff has changed with COVID for them and everything. And she said for the first couple of months, they had to do everything online. They made videos with songs, and her husband Luke preached, and then they sent it to their church members for Sundays. And on Wednesdays, they did Google Hangouts, and their youth group met on Zoom. In May, they were able to get back together, but they had to wear masks and keep the chairs 2 meters apart. That's pretty spread out.
Well, yeah, it's the same here, 6 feet, but
yeah.
I suppose maybe they couldn't just like have a row and it sounds like everything was that far apart.
Maybe they didn't get to like keep families together and whatever. So in July, they came back to the States for a 6-month furlough, and they were able to visit all their churches even though they had all the restrictions and everything. So that's pretty impressive. Germany has tightened some of their restrictions up in the last couple months. Their church services are about the same, still with masks and distance and everything, but now there's no singing allowed. And only essential businesses are open, and schools are currently online. And the kids are supposed to go back to school February 16th. So they're getting close. And this is a picture of their ladies group that's gotten a chance to meet, but still all spread out and following all the different rules and stuff. They aren't able to do their normal outreach and fellowship activities, which has been hard for people, and their people really love to get together as a church family. But they are glad to be able to at least have church services, and they do know a few people in their church that lost their jobs because of COVID and stuff. All of their clubs and sports and all that kind of stuff is still closed for now. And they have had some new people have started to come to their church, which is super exciting. And it's just because of different COVID-related things. So they got back to Germany at the beginning of this month, and they're in a new ministry. So they asked that we would pray for them as they get to know the church and the community. The community part is really difficult because everything is closed, but they've been able to meet their neighbors. So we can pray that they have a good relationship with them and that they'd be a good testimony. And Judah is supposed to be in kindergarten, which is closed right now. So we're praying that it would open soon so he can practice and improve his German and be able to make some friends. So this is them getting all ready to go back to Germany, and thankfully they're there and they got to do all their traveling around and raise support and everything.
Well, it sounds like restrictions here are not nearly as bad as they are there.
Yeah, but they have a good attitude about it.
Yeah.
They're just trying to find ways to make it work and just looking for what God could teach them and how they could learn a little bit more about him and how to interact with their neighbors and everything.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for watching. Hope you learned something new and hope you found our hidden object today. It's kind of small, in case you didn't find it. Make sure that you watch again next week and hear the next part of our story and learn a little bit more about Israel.
We're glad to have you along with us. Thank you so much, and we'll see you then.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.